Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the October 7th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. Time is now 7 o'clock. I'll call the meeting to order. We will begin tonight with the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we move into public input, which is next on our agenda this evening, we do have a virtual member joining us tonight, Mr. Hayes. As presented in the past couple of weeks, we do need a quorum in the room to allow for virtual attendance, which we do have. And we need to take a vote on virtual attendance tonight.
Make a motion to allow virtual attendance.
We have a motion by Ms. Douglas. Second by Mr. Sun. Any discussion? No? We'll do a roll call vote, please. Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Ms. Harrison?
Yes.
Mr. Leary?
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Taylor? Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Barca? Yes. So that is going to pass 7-0-1. Okay, fantastic. Mr. Hayes, if you could just share your reason for being remote tonight and if there's anybody with you in the room.
There is nobody with me in the room, and my concerns are COVID-19. I have not been vaccinated.
All right, sir. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Next up in our agenda is public input. We have a few members in the audience this evening, I think, to present town department budgets, but would anyone like to speak to the board tonight? Seeing none and seeing nobody rushing into the door, we'll close public input. We have a second round of public input at the conclusion of tonight's meeting. Reviews and additions, changes to tonight's agenda. No. A couple from that I'm aware of anyways. Conservation Committee has a conflicting meeting this evening and they will not be presenting. They've asked because of that conflict to present next week. And also, as you might note, we have an absent member tonight, Ms. Stevens. She was intending to present the planning board meeting. Because of her absence, she will also present next week. So I am aware of planning board and conservation shifting from this week into next. I also am aware of Mr. Burnell, who's with us this evening, who's going to be presenting the information technology budget. He has graciously offered to present that last this evening to allow other department heads the opportunity to present and then move on with their evening itself. Any other program changes this evening? Are we moving anything forward from next week into this week?
We're just going to bring forward revenues.
Revenues.
Good time.
Okay.
And we can do that before Brunel or after Brunel.
Okay, excellent. And do we have code for this evening as well?
We do.
Okay, fantastic. So that, I don't know, I guess there was some conflicts as to when that was going to happen, but code will be presented tonight as well.
He's here.
Mr. Chair, there was the one item we had emailed.
Nice to meet you. All right, anything else for tonight's agenda?
There was the one item we had emailed about that you had sent to the committee this morning about adding for this evening.
Yes, absolutely. So that's under correspondence, but we can do that now. There is a request to reopen or talk about 4140, given some questions amongst the committee, and a committee member asked to revisit that this evening. So we'll add that to the agenda. We can add that after IT, if that works. All right, perfect. Let me make a note of that, 4140. All right. Excellent. And the only other item that I had is, given the focus on the town, I did reach out to Mrs. Harrison earlier today. I don't believe there's any need to have a school business section in tonight's agenda. Would you agree?
That's fine. Yeah. We met last night and we're plugging right along. And if you watched the meeting from last night, you'll probably get all the information. I don't have a budget report at this time for this month. The only thing I do have is the October 1st enrollments.
Okay.
Which I can forward to the board if you'd
Yeah.
like.
That'd be great. If you could share that over to the committee, we'll circulate it. But other than that, we'll remove school business from tonight's agenda as well. All right. So moving into correspondence, I do have some correspondence on screen here. I'll make it bigger so those who are watching virtually can see. This has also been shared with Mr. Sullivan in advance, so he has it for our minutes. We do have the town budget report circulated to the budget committee on October 1st. On September 30th, there was a part-time town clerk tax collector question that came in from a committee member and was submitted by Ms. Harrison and responded to by our town clerk. On October 1st, the Capital Improvement Planning Committee meeting agenda was circulated, and that meeting was held on October 4th. I couldn't join because of a work conflict, but that did happen. On October 2nd, we had meeting minutes from September 30th circulated to the committee. On October 4th, Town Administrator Brown sent a reminder to department heads of tonight's meeting. On October 5th, Mrs. Stevens notified myself that she will not be present. October 6th, Mr. Hayes noted that he will be attending virtually this evening. And then earlier today, and this is just an update, Mr. Sullivan, for your awareness, that's not on your version. Town Administrator Brown circulated requested information on PFOA legal costs, transfer station additional hours costs, as well as CIP vehicle replacement schedule, which was forwarded to the committee. Anything else? Did any other committee members receive correspondence over the past week? Nope. Okay, we'll close correspondence. Next up, we have review and acceptance of minutes. We deferred last week's, September 23rd's meeting to tonight. So we have two sets of minutes to review if everyone has had an opportunity to review them and we're prepared to make a motion.
I actually had a comment on the
Okay.
923 one. On the top of page 7, I think, it says, Carrie Douglas mentioned that she appreciated the due diligence and liked the idea of renovating GMS. I liked exploring the idea of renovating GMS. I don't necessarily want to be tied to a position on that one. So I liked exploring the idea. I don't necessarily like renovating GMS. Just so if it comes up in the future, I don't get, but you liked it! Like, I actually read the minutes, so.
So we have a word change on page
Yes,
7
please.
of the
Just-
September 23rd.
So just a
minutes.
clarification of that, but thank you. Otherwise, so other than there's.
Any other updates to the minutes? With the change to the minutes, why don't we do it in two sets of motions, please?
I'll make a motion to approve the amended minutes of 9:23.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Leary. Discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Sun,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
I am a yes.
Yes.
Yes, Ms. Douglas, Mr. Taylor.
Yes.
Yes.
Abstain.
Abstain. And Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Yes. So that passes 7-0-1. Okay, fantastic. Now we have the minutes from September 30th.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve by Ms. Douglas. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Sun. Discussion. We'll do a roll call vote, same order. Mr. Sun,
Yes.
Ms. Harrison,
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
I am a yes. Ms.
Yes.
Douglas, Mr. Taylor,
Yes.
Mr.
Yes.
Barca, and Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
Yes. 9:30 passes 8-0-0. Cool. I think that's it. Great. Moving into town business tonight, we have a few departments with us this evening. We have Town Administrator Brown that's going to get us kicked off. And I believe we're starting with zoning board, but I'll let Town Administrator Brown confirm.
Well, the first item, I just wanted to point out to you that since the last time we met, a couple changes to the budget. There were some other minor ones too, but two large changes. One in the police department, you'll hear next Monday night that we've been able to find another candidate, hire a police officer for the department, and knowing that person's salary and benefits, we've updated that in the budget. So that actually ended up being about a $10,000 decrease in the budget. So if you see any numbers there changing. Also, we've been doing a lot of work with the library and the school department and our capital improvements plan, looking at our impact fees. And through some of the research, I discovered that the fire department impact fees can be used to pay for the fire station bond. And probably the situation that we're in right now is the most appropriate use, probably the best way to use those impact fees. So that has had a significant impact on the proposed budget, where we've actually planned on using $65,000 of impact fees towards the 2022 bond payment. So that really helped with the bottom line of the budget.
Does that
Will
come
that-
across as revenue though, or doesn't decrease the budget, right?
No, it comes, what happens, it doesn't come across as a revenue, we just show it as a reduction in the schedule for the bond payment, because it will be coming from a different fund, not from the general fund. So when we go and make that bond payment, some of it will come from the general fund, which is the budget, and another will come from the impact fee account.
So what happens next year when we don't have those funds?
So there will,
Are we just kicking the can?
so, yeah, I mean, there is the potential that we don't continue to collect the impact fees for fire department. Is driven by, obviously, houses. When they're issued their certificate of occupancy, that's when we collect it. So there is a potential that it could have a budget impact in 2023.
Was there discussion about just making it as a principal payment in addition to what's already budgeted?
We're not able to make additional with the bond that we have right now. We're not able to refinance it or make additional principal payments. I don't think you can ever make the additional, but we're pretty much locked into this bond payment the way it's structured for 10 years, as I understand.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you.
So with that, I think we could just start right off with the code enforcement. And
Okay.
I'll introduce our new inspector, Blackwell. Mr. Jeffrey Blackwell is here this evening. Good evening, everybody. Yes. You want to come on up, Jeff? Because next year, this is yours. I think we're all aware that over at least the last, I would say, feels like the last 3 years, this department has been changing from the point where we had a retirement, the position went over to the fire department. We had a period of interim inspector. Then we were able to hire Inspector Dion. Inspector Dion unfortunately passed. The board then decided that it might be a good time to bring the inspector position back to the town office. So we've been through a lot in the last 3 years. We're very, very fortunate to have Inspector Blackwell sitting here next to me today. He has been on the job maybe six weeks, maybe 8.
8 weeks, yeah.
8 weeks.
Yeah.
And I joked with him saying, don't worry about it. There's not a lot that goes on in Litchfield. It's pretty much residential. And he has just been flat out ever since. One of the things that we changed with the position when we brought it back over to the town office, we wanted to increase our communication with the planning board and the zoning board of adjustment. So we made the position, we changed it from an hourly position to a salaried position. And we've asked Inspector Blackwell to attend planning board meetings and all the zoning board of adjustment meetings. And he has done that. And it has been busy since you've started. So anyhow, but the salary that you see here is an increase, but there's also some increments that we have in the first 6 months and then over a year of employment where we really wanted to have sort of an incentive to achieve certain levels of certification. So we have in there his salary and a couple of incentives. But you'll see the biggest increase in this line, and this the whole department is in the salary at $11,630.
So I have a question about this, and it's just for consistency purposes, because I have this discussion with the school board regularly. My understanding is that this was at one point, in the not too distant past, a part-time position. Have we moved it to a full-time without going before the voters?
This position has been a full-time. What was your
Well, I'm
question?
looking at the code enforcement, the expenses in 2019 was under 18,000. So I'm assuming that was a part-time position.
No, this position has been full-time for a very long period of time, way before me. I mean, Roland Bergeron had held this position along with other hats But then Inspector Lynch held it for at least
So
8 or
perhaps
10
it's-
years as a full-time employee.
What you're seeing in the budget, Ms. Douglas,
Mhm.
is when we were in an interim period between
Oh,
the
'cause we
code
had
who
nobody there.
retired and nobody there.
Okay. So the actual expense in 2019 is 17,576. So if
It-
part of it is we went half a year without somebody, then
Yeah.
yes.
And maybe the next line under that, if you're looking back that far, the next line, the temporary inspector, maybe we charge some.
12,000,
some stuff
so
there.
you're still under 30.
Yeah.
So you went from 30 to 72, so. I just, again, consistency purposes, if we went from part-time to full-time without consulting the voters, I'd have a problem with that. But it looks like that's a year of an anomaly. So I'd have to go back to other spreadsheets to confirm, but that's, okay. That
Yeah,
answers that
no,
question.
this has been a full-time position with benefits for many years.
Okay.
I can assure you that Selectman Leary would not allow that to happen.
Well, that's what I was
I've heard that many times.
But when I see an actual expense in 2019
I
of 30,
understand.
and then you see
That's-
72, and we had a resident in here last week concerned about the trajectory of the town budget, I got to start asking. Well, I should have been asking before, but I'm going to continue asking.
A question on code for it. Last year, when we were presented this budget, we heard a lot about software updates and software changes and new programs being used to help with the efficiency of the department. Would love to hear just an update on how that's working, what your view is on kind of the automation of the permits.
We will get there with it. Learning it right now is a bit of a slow process, especially as I'm trying to come up to speed with everything. It will certainly help the efficiency of the office. I'll be able to do more from the field as far as updating reports and inspections and whatnot, which will save time back in the office to be doing it almost twice. Instead of bringing it back, have an admin person update that information. I'll be able to put it right into an iPad right there in the field and be done.
Yep.
So there'll be certain efficiencies like that. Sure.
Good, thank you.
Is there a reason we're keeping 1,000 in the temporary inspector line?
Yeah, so that's intended there to cover when we have scheduled, vacation
Vacation or
time,
something? Okay,
um,
that makes sense.
unanticipated vacancies and stuff like that. So typically what our plan is, you'll see, I'm not sure if we'll be able to find a temporary. We've been fortunate that we've had a relationship with the neighboring communities and another retired inspector. So between the abutting communities and the retired inspector that we have a connection with, we've been able to.
You fill vacations and things like that.
But also we do, I know when we were, prior to Jeff, we would work really hard with our contractors and let them know that, we're going to have a week of vacation. We try to really coordinate with them and get everything done before they leave or have it scheduled so when we come back.
And that was going to be my question, because I remember my trailer had a big calendar with big X marks. Cannot call inspector on this date.
Yeah.
So, okay.
We're very fortunate that, we have a small community. In the community, the inspector builds a good relationship with the contractors and has that open communication.
Troy, did I hear last week that the building inspector was getting a new vehicle or a
Yes.
newer vehicle?
So one of the police cruisers that's going to be traded, one of those frontline police cruisers that will be traded out. We're taking it in-house and we'll be, converting it to the building inspector's vehicle. I'm not making this stuff up, but I think the next morning after our budget committee meeting, Jeff had the vehicle out at Edwards Car Repair and received a phone call that the vehicle failed inspection, that the underneath the carriage is all corroded. There was an actual hole in the frame. And so that vehicle now has been taken out of service and Jeff is using his personal vehicle.
Bummer.
Yeah, we
That's
We
what else to
didn't
say.
see that
How will
coming.
that show up in the budget then?
what's
You have
that?
to be here
How will
when
that
we
end
do
up
it.
showing up in the budget as far as like mileage
Or
reimbursement?
mileage costs, that's a good question.
We don't typically do that, so that's a cost that we're going to absorb this year in the operating budget. But we are hopeful that we will have the vehicle assigned, retrofitted and assigned to the building inspector for the first of the year.
Excellent. Is that one of the Explorers or?
It'll be one of the first Tahoe that they purchased back in 2018.
All right. Any questions on code? Nope. Thank you very much. See, that wasn't too bad, right?
No, it was not.
We're gonna do health though.
Let me see right here.
Then we'll do the health. And the reason we're doing health is currently right now, that position is held by our deputy chief over in the fire department. But come the first of the year, the position will be going back to the building inspector.
What's the number on that?
This is 4411.
Thank you.
Mosquito health department. I couldn't find it either. The health officer is a appointed position by the Board of Selectmen. It really could be any person. Doesn't need to be the building inspector. There's a real benefit to have it be the building inspector or another employee. That's why we had like the fire department. The whole purpose was to try to create efficiencies and just eliminate duplication of inspections and just really help communication. One of the things that a good example what the health officer does on an annual basis, if you're running, say like a licensed daycare facility, then you'll need to have a sign off from the health officer. And also, the fire department will have to do a fire inspection. So between the health officer and if we have a deputy that, the way it's set up right now, if our deputy continues to be one of the firefighters, then, we can have that inspection done by one individual. So nothing really changed here. The one thing that I'm, was informed by Deputy Chief Nichols was that seminars and conventions, be prepared that the state is coming out with new mandates, and anyone that has the appointment as health officer and those deputies, there is going to be some mandatory training and some mandatory reporting, which does not exist today, which it makes sense, I think. I'm not sure if the pandemic, triggered that, or there's just been ongoing issues that they determine that there's, some need for training.
So is 150 an estimate or an actual?
It's an estimate. We figured we'd allocate, and the three, whether we have one deputy, two deputies, obviously the health officer and one or two deputies. So we chose three, the health officer and potentially two deputies.
No, we've traditionally carried 3, but we usually carry it at 70. I was just curious as to why we went to 150. So if there was
It was an estimate, and just knowing that now it's, it's going to be mandatory, that we're not knowing what's really going to happen in 2022. That's
Okay. Pretty straightforward budget. Any questions on Health Department 4411?
Are we not testing DARE, or is that becoming every other year, or what?
So that line item was there in the past. Actually, the state, this was a reimbursement. The state used to come down. They had a program where they were going around testing a lot of water bodies. For whatever reason, that program has been cut back, and they've not tested DARE for a couple of years.
So should we be testing DARE?
It was, that again, the state was the one that was handling it, and they had the qualified person that would come out through their whole lake testing program. I guess we could start it. I mean, I don't know much about, what the protocol would be and what the cost would be. My guess is that the cost could be a little higher, and it wouldn't be substantial, but it would be a testing program that we would need to initiate.
Well, I'm not going to tell you what to do because we don't want to go into that, but it just might be something worth considering since there are kids who fish there and play there, that it might be worth knowing. Obviously, defer to you guys as to whether it's actually necessary, but if it is, it should be in the budget.
Yeah, no two-headed fish.
it comes up every year on the thing. Like, has Dara been tested? I'd like to have my kids go swimming there. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah,
Just-
it's just, I don't think the swimming is that active, and it's not really promoted. No, and I understand.
I do believe Doug Nichols is looking at that right now.
So yeah, I mean, obviously
He has mentioned it to me, so.
it's just a question that's been out there in the community. You guys can determine whether or not it's necessary. But if it is, it should be just make sure it's in the budget. That's all.
Any other questions? Mr. Hayes, any questions on health or code?
No.
No. All right. Thank you very much. One final thought. Is this where also we would see the milfoil treatments? I know that's been a discussion point in the past.
So that was a discussion in the past, and it was as a special warrant article.
Right. That's right. Where did that land?
Did we pull it?
It was pulled.
Yeah.
And there really hasn't, and it was pulled due to lack of information. There really hasn't been.
We treated 1 year though.
Stop treating.
Not within like the last 6 years. There was the town did at one point in time do some treatment, but not over at least the last 6 years that I've been here. So
I'm
there
the
you go.
chairman of the Recreation Commission,
Yeah.
and we have looked into it. And the plan would be, the last quote we got a couple of years ago would be approximately $10,000 a year, every year to maintain it, to get it to the point. And then there'd be an ongoing maintenance, just to take care of the milfoil. And they have to do it in stages before you can't just eradicate it all at once.
All right. Thank you. Yeah, I wasn't sure with Dara being here or where else in the budget that where that would fall. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
So we have, who's here, library?
We have library here and rec. Yeah.
Zoning. Zoning's back there.
Zoning. Yeah.
Were you hoping to hide?
All right. So we'll move into Parks and Recreation 5220. Which I think we're going to have a debate about field maintenance.
Oh boy. Why?
You want to go?
No, go for it.
Oh, you want me to go?
He's like, I'm here to answer the questions.
First, my name's Steve Gannon. I'm the chairman of the Litchfield Recreation
Nice
Commission.
to meet you.
So I do think it's very important for us to note that the rec commission has not gone out for a public response for the field maintenance for next year. And we're very concerned that number may be higher than what was last year's number.
Was it a 2-year contract?
One.
It's done in 1 year.
1 year with a potential 3-year extended contract.
Okay.
The current vendor has not returned to us as of yet to request to extend that contract. We have seen and heard that just the materials alone have increased between 30% and 100%. And then, of course, with everybody else struggling with the fuel prices, getting work. So I honestly think that budget item may jump up.
Do we have a timeline on when you expect to have a proposal?
We are rewriting the RFP now. We actually spoke about that at our last meeting. And one issue we face is RFPs you typically do by paper, but nobody reads the paper. So we're actually going to go out to direct solicitation of different companies to see. And that will also give us a true idea of how much these fields will cost to maintain.
Okay.
Okay. What's included in that? Is there Sawmill, Dara, Brickyard?
No, so it's pretty much, I think we have 7 parks. So Roy Memorial,
yeah.
Scott Innisfield, Brickyard, you have Jeff Lane, Corning,
Yeah.
and then cutting of the grass along John Bryant River axis. And then the treatment, if it's irrigated, they treat the grass. If it's not irrigated, they just cut it.
Yeah.
And then the last contractor actually took care of the pump last year, flushed all the irrigation heads in the fields and all that kind of stuff.
Well, we can't debate what we don't know yet, right? But I think
Right.
it's something to consider.
They've never looked better, in my personal opinion. They look
Yeah, the fields look great.
fabulous.
All right, you want to walk us through the rest?
Yeah, so just starting from the top, no change in the custodian hours. We have a reduction in the clerical support, but we talked about that last week where this was the minute taker for the rec commission. So it's been eliminated in the rec budget, but that has been moved to the Board of Selectmen. Electricity, estimating $400 increase. That's just based on our, our 3-year average, a run rate, you say, and I think I put in there a 3% anticipated adjustment to rates. We still are in the process. I don't know what the holdup is of going out to bid and getting proposals for electric rates for 2022. They should be. I should be receiving that information any day now. I'm just warned that anything tied to energy is usually going up and not
That's
down.
what my question was like, is 3% going to be sufficient to cover?
Yeah.
We've all seen the headlines.
One thing we did notice, considering where Talent Hall was pretty much closed for what, 18 months, a year to 18 months, we expected a significant decrease in our electricity cost, and there really wasn't. It dropped some, but not to the levels we thought. So this was eye-opening because now we realize that we have areas that we need to make some changes where we can make it more efficient.
We had an increase in propane gas. As you know, we're working with the school department. They went out and they found a vendor that was giving a good price, but the price did change from $1.33 a gallon to $1.85. So that's what's driving that increase in propane. Water charges, we know that there is a rate increase coming. And that I'm anticipating that to be somewhere between 16 and 18%.
We need to drill our own pipe.
I was gonna say, do you guys get better rates than me? I think I pay more than that for my little lawn.
Well, so the water that you have at Talent Hall is probably not used really. If it's for just the water fountain and flushing, toilets and stuff. And the irrigation's all well.
Oh, is it? Okay, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
All the parks are well water. At Talent, some of the irrigation outside the building it runs off the I believe
makes
off the
sense,
building
then.
water, but once again, this is one that I thought would really drop substantially because no one was in the building.
It's your monthly fee we're getting killed on. That doesn't
Well,
go
you
away.
you have the minimum, yeah. Building repairs and maintenance, just every year we try to do a 3-year average. I don't know of any other better way of trying to determine what a cost would be because these are all, most of the time, it's all unknown costs. Talent Hall is an older building, and so anyhow, a small reduction there, driven strictly by our 3-year average.
We had talked about painting that building, I believe, last year.
Yep, that's something I was going to mention. This line item we want to keep strong because some of the inefficiencies we realize, and when you add in COVID, we'd like to change all the faucets over to touchless, the toilets over to touchless, more efficient water, paint the building. There's a lot of work that needs to be done to that building. We have some trimming on the side of the edge of the roof that is starting to come off, so it definitely needs some love, but it needs to be painted. Last time it was painted was by Pat Jewett telling him just go out and do it. So we
Did it.
could probably put that out to bid.
So I guess my question then would be is it worth having a 5-year plan or developing a 5-year plan on investments in that building? Because you mentioned efficiencies and all these other improvements. Rather than throw a number at it and hope it works, like actually developing a plan with a real number to it. And even then we can
That
just
was a conversation we also had is, are we throwing good money after bad money? Like what is, when it comes to a capital improvement plan, what is Talent Hall? Where is it going to be in 5 years, 10 years?
Right.
Should we continue to put money into it or should we investigate removing it and building a new community facility? Right now it is nothing more than a gymnasium in a cement block. It's not really a community center. You can only have so many people in there at one time. So it is something that we do need to address. And maybe with the capital the impact fees, maybe I was thinking about having somebody come out to give us an idea of what can we do to the building? Can we expand? Can we do some community rooms or something like that? Do something to the building.
How much life is left in the floor at Town Hall? Is my understanding the last time it was finished was the last time it could possibly be finished.
That is the understanding that we got as well. They cannot sand it again and finish it. So the next thing would be, do we put a new wood floor down, which, now you're starting to unearth a lot, or do we cover it with a rubber mat? Can it support a rubber mat? So it cannot be finished again. It cannot be sanded and refinished. So it goes good money after bad money, right? What do we do? And then if we start tearing up the floor, we have to do a lot of other work. Do we have to bring it up to a specific code?
Well,
All these
I also
questions.
understand there's floor brace issues underneath there and structural issues underneath that floor. So good
So
times.
is the building repair and maintenance, is that pretty much all Talent Hall, or is how does that 100 get divided up?
Most of it is
70%?
talent, right? That's
Yeah,
right.
I mean, it's a good point. I mean, if we had, I look at that as not just that building, but I mean, it could be some things outside, some lights, a fence, a gate,
Okay. But I mean, as far as when you put together the budget, I mean, is there, repairs that need to be done at the snack shacks at Corning Field? Is there,
No, I think most of it at this point would be for talent. A lot of the fields, they need regular ongoing maintenance through the contractor doing, and as I said, he's cleaned a lot of the heads, rebuilt some of the pumps, done a lot of that work. The fences look okay. The contractor in town just regraded the parking lot at Dara. So that's nice. So now it's really, we're back at the point of focusing. What's the highest priority right now would be talent.
All right, moving on.
So really, I think that, the next big increase you see here is down at the facility improvements capital outlay, which we're looking, and again, Mr. Gannon can explain that the Rec Commission is looking to install some ADA compliant equipment. Here you're looking at like swings, some
Yep.
type of swing
Yep.
set.
That will be coming out of this year's budget. We're going to be replacing or adding a new swing, adding an ADA compliant swing, and we also already purchased the hardware to fix the broken slide. Now we just need to get some people down, manpower down there to do it. And I don't know what else. I think next year that could definitely drop down because I don't know what else we'll be doing as far as facility improvements and capital outlay.
So you've already purchased, so this can be zeroed out.
Yeah, that's next year, right? So you
So you
purchased,
could leave this at $1.
Yeah,
You
I
don't
think
have
that-
any plan.
right,
No.
so you purchased it already in this year's budget.
Yeah.
All right, yeah.
Already helping the
Nice
tax.
job.
Already helping the tax. Yeah.
Nice catch.
So leave that at $1 so that we
All right.
have a marker.
All right. Any questions for Parks and Rec 4520?
Is there any discussion about trying to get the users of these fields to participate as far as some of the higher costs? I know in the past, the different sports paid for chemical toilets at the different fields, certainly as far as field maintenance, if costs are skyrocketing, then, certainly needs to be a little bit of sharing the wealth. And I think for the most part, a lot of the organizations tend to be a little cash rich over time where, it's time to start paying for some of the use again.
Yeah. So one thing that we did realize, I mean, if you think about it, we came to a screaming halt. We had all kinds of sports leagues running constantly. Talent Hall was being used 7 days a week, 10, 12 hours a day. Everything came to a screaming halt. Now we're seeing some sport leagues come back quickly and ramp up. Some are lingering, some are not coming back. But we're also starting to see requests to use Talent Hall from different organizations that never had the request. It made me think about also when we had to shut everything down is who has access to what, who's on the fields, who's doing what. We should have a better control over our fields, knowing who's on the field at what time. And it also makes me think is why can't we open this up to maybe generate some revenue for the fields, open it up to outside companies like the Chaos and Kindness concert that was held. I use that basically as a proving ground to say that, yeah, we can do this and we can actually turn some of these fields into making some money. Some of the sports leagues, most of them are nonprofit. So that's a tough battle to go after a nonprofit and say you need to contribute. But I think some of the times we could actually do it where they participate in, paying for the trash or at least pick up the trash or.
Right. So I mean, for many years, they did have in their own budgets for these particular items.
And then if we could put more money into the fields, there'll be more interest. Maybe we can get to the point of putting up lights or building a bathroom so we're not using the porta potties. And
So what sports aren't coming back?
the blast, the larger girls blast didn't return. 10U is coming back, but they're struggling. It was just some of them are just very slow to get back into the groove. Some of them came aboard very, very, very quickly. And now we have the Scouts BSA are getting into Talent Hall. They used to use the church, but now they're kind of been pushed away. Wrestling is struggling to get into the schools. Obviously everybody's taking the same stances. Like, what are we doing with our facilities? Who's in here? What are we doing? Should they be in here? So now with the Talent Hall, obviously more people coming in. We're going to have to increase cleaning. And that's what we're looking at now. Cleaning supplies, rotation of the custodian, and making some of the leagues that use talent or the fields be responsible and help clean and, do whatever they have to do to help us out, because we are just a volunteer board and can't do it all alone.
Okay. Any other questions? Mr.
Actually, one last question.
Sure.
While we have the rec commission here, it'll ultimately be under Mr. Brunel's contract, but I had asked last year in terms of, but there was no representation. As far as the Litchfield rec site, is that really needed for $700 a year to have another site when it could just be on the regular town site and most of the sports have their own sites anyway?
I don't know what we actually pay for.
$300.
$300.
I thought it was $400 for the hosting and then the domain registration for $300.
$400 was that was the .gov domain registration.
Okay.
$300 for the site.
Okay.
That's for the domains. That's domain hosting on the site itself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that site really needed though, or why can't it exist on the town website as far as the information?
I guess it can. Being an IT guy, I'm actually taking a lot of interest in revamped it, and we're using it. I'm trying to get our schedule out there. So as we're saying, who's on the field at what time, I want to be able to have anybody be able to look at a schedule and see who's what, what team's practicing, who's not practicing. And then we're also working with somebody about making automated Google Docs so they can request access and then it'll be automatically added to the calendar.
Okay.
So it is, I don't know if John wants everything on the main town page. I think I like the idea of keeping the recs separate just so that we're not playing in each other's sandbox, if you would.
Yeah, I mean, being that it's their own, it's front and center. So when you go to that site, it's front and center. If they come to the town site, they're going to get the town stuff and they got to drill into it and find if something is really available. So it's simpler to have it separated out.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Hayes, any questions from yourself?
No questions.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time, Mr. Gannon.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Gannon. For a couple of years, we've had no representation. It's been tough. So definitely beneficial.
All right, I know we
Probably
have,
zoning board of adjustment, and then we could go to library. And
all right, so zoning board is 4191.
thank you, Laura.
Good evening.
So I'll go ahead and I did make a minor adjustment today, Laura, because we've been kind of struggling with what the cost of the legal notices would be. So talking to the staff today, we originally were planning on a cost of $300 per meeting. We think now with the COVID requirements of publishing all that notice about how to participate remotely and everything, that we can get it down to about $175 a notice. So that's your first line item. There's no way of knowing really of how many meetings we're going to have a year. We could have 12. They meet monthly, and it's all driven by building permit. How many people want to put a swimming pool 2 feet from the neighbor's backyard, property line.
Butters notices and
this
that
and
type of
that.
thing.
So we've just gone ahead and put, an anticipation of 10 meetings and a legal notice in the newspapers of $175. And the rest is 2 other line items. We have our books and periodicals, the annual books that come out from the state, has updated laws. Those books are the same ones that we give the planning board members. Those are $8 each. And planning on some seminars. We have a very new, I say very new, but we have some senior members, but we've taken a lot of new volunteers on, and we want to really try to make sure we have training available for the new members and the old as well in 2022. Laura, who just happened to take over chairmanship a couple months ago, is here this evening and
Yeah, I just wanted
answer
to,
any questions that you have.
right, and reiterate how important the training is going to be. I think we just appointed, the selectmen just appointed 5 new members. So there was a couple of times you may have heard that we didn't even have enough members to have a meeting.
Right.
So I know that really got people in the community frustrated, and understandably so. So we do have new members in the NHMA. There's a lot of folks out there that do really good training, which is going to be crucial to get our board back up and running the way it should be.
All right. Thank you very much.
Just out of curiosity, and it's small, but is there any chance that the laws and stuff will be online as opposed to having to print out a new copy every year? I just know that a lot of the books I had were online, and that way the annual updates it was probably a subscription for all I know.
I believe they are online.
Yeah.
I know that a lot of the members on the planning board and zoning board, they like to have it at the meeting. It's easier for them to
I hear you.
to highlight and have their little tabs in the book because you're live and
Right.
and I, as of right now, we still have members asking for those books.
No, my only concern is laws change. So to make sure that we have the most updated stuff is you'd hate to pull out a law and be like, oh, wait, that was updated last week.
Once a year, once all the laws have changed, that book is updated and printed, and that's the one that we're buying.
They change once a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
In New Hampshire, OSA does put out handbooks for planning board and zoning board, which are online that we print out for members. But I believe the book Troy's talking about is the combination of like the laws and the annotations and the case law that are there. So it's really good when we have a meeting, if somebody's talking about something or an attorney comes in and they cite a case or a statute, just to have it there and to look it up. And after a while, it's the same thing that's being talked about. So you have it tabbed, like Troy said, and you can look at it and then
Right.
So it's.
I mean, if
beneficial
it
to have.
updates once a year, that's awesome. My concern would be like, oh, well, it updated last week, and so all this is pointless. But if it's once a year, then then it makes sense. Absolutely. Because you'd hate to just go into a meeting and cite the wrong case law. You miss something.
Well, that can still happen with the books because case laws come out, throughout the year. But the statutes we can have a little bit of a handle on, through the legislative session.
Excellent.
Is there a revenue offset on this department for as far as fees for?
There are, yeah. We're going to go through revenues this evening.
I was just
And-
curious in general, if we've
and
seen.
I want to say off the
revenue
top of my
growth?
head that I believe I may have offset this 100% with revenues, but we'll find out if I'm wrong or not when we go through revenues.
But you just lowered your.
Yeah.
So you should maybe you're doing pretty good.
We'll find out.
All right. Any questions for zoning? Mr. Hayes, giving you an opportunity.
Yeah, nothing at this time.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Trick.
Again, thank you, Laura, for attending. We've not had representation for a couple of years. It's very helpful.
Moving over to library.
Okay.
4550.
And anyone with paper copy, or you're all going live, but there was a couple changes that happened in just a few hours after we printed your paper copies. And I think one of them was the library budget.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening. And you don't have to worry, it went down, it didn't go up. So-
I just may take a moment to introduce yourself for those that might be tuning in and watching
Yes.
for the first time. I don't know.
I'm Vicki Barrick, the library director. I'm Donna Ferguson, chairperson.
Thank you very much. Pleasure for you to be with us this evening. Thank you.
So we're proposing for 2022 a budget of 309,347, which is a 1.28% increase. So as I normally do, I've got you a sheet of highlights for the bigger ticket items. So first, we have a little reminder that a lot of service type items were taken out of the last budget because of the pandemic, things that we wouldn't be able to do. So we'd like to get that restored. So that's to get our programming back up and running, mostly programming, but conferences will be happening again. So there'll be fees for that, mileage, that kind of thing. Looking at payroll, we're in our third year of the 3-year phase-in for the health insurance buyout. So you see an increase of 1867 there, and then that completes it. Wages overall actually went down because we had a staff change. So part of that has offset what we're asking for a 4-hour increase for the assistant librarian position, as our children's librarian doesn't have an assistant, and she actually needs more than 4 hours, but it didn't seem like this was a good year for that. So, but this will help alleviate some of that strain. We also had great difficulty in replacing our librarian position this year. As any of you know who have tried to hire people, it took us 6 months. We went through 2 rounds. People just wanted way too much money. I can't even imagine what kind of candidates we would have got if we didn't have the benefits that we do. So it was a very tough time, and we had to make a few adjustments. But overall, we've got someone in place now. He's in his 2nd week. It's a gentleman, so feel free to come in and say hello to the new librarian in town. When we look at other operating expenses, it's kind of what it always is. Heating oil went up. We're part of the school district contract, as Troy mentioned, the town is. Our lift at the library, the handicap lift, is due for a 5-year load test. So that's on here on 4/30. The $946 is showing in community programs to restore it to where it was pre-COVID. A bit of an increase in library supplies is we need to order more bank checks. There's an increase in books and media for downloadable books, Mango Languages and Heritage Quest. They're all online services that we have offered in the past. And I also have Hoopla added in here. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but we got Hoopla through the CARES Act grant in 2020. And so that's another downloadable service for books, audiobooks, comics, music, TV, and movies. And we're adding, I think, $1,000 in to cover that. So it's been pretty well received. It's no wait type of service. So they charge us per download, where the New Hampshire downloadable books, which also gets used a ton, they do have to wait. So there's holds lists. So if they can't get something there, they can go over to Hoopla and get something right away. And they don't really carry the same materials. They don't work with the same publishers. So they really complement each other very nicely. Next, we have furniture and fixtures. So because we're a 2-level library with adult and teens upstairs and children's downstairs, we would like to get a couple more book carts so that we can have a cart of adult things for quick grabs, point of purchase, if you will, if you're at the grocery store, for to put in the children's room. So when the moms are there and don't want to take their little ones up, they can grab a magazine, they can grab a popular book, something like that, and vice versa. So when grandma or mom is able to come in on her own and grab her stuff, there'll be a cart up there with children's books that they could pull a couple things for the kids. We also have in here the addition of a flat shelf book truck, and that would be used to move materials and supplies around when we're holding programs. So especially when things are outdoors, it would make things a lot easier to be able to get them all on a cart and take them out instead of carrying box after box. Mileage, again, is a restoration to pre-COVID as a seminars and team program supplies. And then we have a couple of decreases. One was in software purchases and licenses. The increase we were told we were going to have for 2021 for our ILS system, our circulation system at the library, didn't end up being as much as we anticipated. So we saved a little bit there. And our new HVAC system that went in through building trust funds has also saved us a bit of money on electricity usage. And then, of course, everybody's unknown is an insurance for next year.
Any questions for the library?
In terms of the year-to-date spending, it looks like it's a little behind pace. Is that based on the fact that you went months without a librarian, or is it just
Yes.
backloaded expenses?
Yes, it's the librarian issue. We did have some fill-in, other people filling in for that, but there's only so much of that you can do and stay under the.
So then is there an opportunity to take some of these expenses and purchase them out of the remainder of this year's budget?
There may be. That is a possibility, yes. There are a few things that we're already planning to do. Like we took septic service out for this year, but we know there's money there. So it's actually being done tomorrow. So we'll stay on our regular schedule and a few other things. But yes, there is that possibility.
Is the library back to full availability now?
It will be as of November 1st.
Just out of curiosity, what percentage of, I guess, checkouts do you have of digital versus print? Just out of curiosity.
It's still more heavy to print.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's probably 30% digital.
And that's through things like Hoopla and those other applications.
Right.
Do you have any metrics this year on people coming in to the library or using the library services? I know in years past you presented those types of stats.
Right. This year's kind of hard to do that.
I understand.
There's not a lot to be able to look at. So instead of people coming in, we've been doing, people are coming in now, but to look at the whole year, we were doing pickup. So people were just picking bags up from inside the back door. And, any bag can represent a family of 5, but it's one bag. So it's hard to say, but I can say that we still have a lot of people doing that. So there are people that are happy to come in at this point. A lot of them are still wearing masks. We don't require it, but we have them there if they want to use it. But every day there are a couple of tables downstairs inside the doorway that are full of bags.
Yeah.
So we anticipate that will start to slow down, but it hasn't thus far.
I think where my head's at with this particular budget, and no surprise, we've had similar conversations over the past couple of years when you presented, on the capital improvement planning committee to potentially build a new library, and given the aging building itself, what is the intention of the Aaron Cutler building, right? When that building was established, where are the documents that say does it exist? What is the intended purpose of that building? So should we vacate that building what is the town's responsibilities for maintaining that
Right.
long term? Have we done any research into that?
The only thing, I have a photocopy of something I think Troy gave me when he came across it a few years ago. And it's the actual section of Aaron Cutler's will that leaves the money. It describes where it has to be built, that somebody else has to donate the land, and what it needs to be built of, but it doesn't address anything else.
The future state.
Right. It doesn't say it goes back to the heirs if it's no longer a library or anything like that.
Just to set the scene for the committee who hasn't had an opportunity to tour that facility, which we did 2 years ago at this point, pre-COVID.
Right.
But at that time, we had talked heavily about the slate roof and how that is failing in certain areas. We talked about the interior and how it needed upgrades. We talked about the carpet, although was the carpet
Yeah,
done?
the carpet's terrible.
So the carpet in that building needs to be replaced. The heating system is 20 plus years old, correct?
We did get that replaced.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that's been done. Point being is that the building is also similar to the Talent Hall conversation earlier. It's showing significant signs of age and deterioration in many different areas of that building. When I look at this budget and I say, all right, knowing the age of the building, the challenges of that building, and now we're well north of $300,000 a year, when just a few years ago we were around $250,000. What is the long-term plan for the library? What makes the most sense for the community? When do we say enough's enough, right? From a community perspective, in terms of funding that particular building without a longer-term plan, right? And I'm having a real hard time with this particular budget because of the increased costs, because of the year-over-year increased costs, and knowing that, yeah, it's there, but there's so much more that this is going to take to make happen. I don't know if that makes sense, but
You're referring to specifically the building and the facilities?
the building and the facilities, I mean, the community utilizes the services, right? But are the services better suited by outsourcing library costs, right? I know we evaluated as a capital improvement committee, what would it take for every Litchfield resident to get a card at a Hudson library or somebody else, right? And the costs for outsourcing it were less than this budget.
Well, we didn't actually have the cost for that.
I thought we ran
The
that.
only thing I was able to tell you that is if a private citizen goes to Hudson, they're going to pay 50 to 75, I'm not sure what it is right now, a year. But that's very different if you're asking them to start supporting a whole community. And I did talk to them at the time that was brought up at the capital improvement meeting, and they are not interested in that.
Yep. And that's another conversation.
Yeah. But I mean, that's every library around us, their communities have improved them. They've rebuilt them. They've renovated. They've added on. They've done. We're 100 years old. Nothing has been done except put a lift in. The walls downstairs in the children's room in my office, they bubble up constantly because of the high water table there. So it's not a good location. We don't have that much land anyway to try and add on anything. We've been trying to see about using impact fees to get a pavilion over there so that we can at least expand, well, not expand necessarily, well, overall, yes. But in the summer, when we have our programs, it has to be outside because we can't have all these people in that little children's room. And then if it rains, we have to cancel. And it's just a constant battle.
I know.
Yeah.
Just to close my thought, right, and then I'll open it up for committee. Again, I think at this point in time, this town is at a reflection point. That's my sense of what is the long-term plan for the library? What's the continued thought between continuing to put good money into the program? And really, what's the return to the citizens? And is there an alternative solution that achieves the same thing for less? That's where I'm at. I'll open it up to the committee for their thoughts.
I mean, just to kind of piggyback on, add another perspective to it. I think the programming that the library puts out for the community, specifically having children that have grown up, attending almost every library thing that we could possibly do, is exemplary considering the restraints that building puts you into. I think if we had a facility what better suited what your goals are and what you do contribute to the community, it's a cycle, right? That would increase usership. It would increase people going to the library and you'd be able to have more things, have more offerings, and that would increase the usage and the impact on the community. So I see where you're coming from, but as somebody again that raised her kids through the library, I would hate to see that. I would hate to see that option removed for families in Litchfield. We really benefited from it, and we still enjoy it. We're reading a library family. So,
Okay, thank you.
mhm.
I brought this up during the candidate roundtable discussion, and seeing as how both of you are here,
Mhm.
what's the feasibility of then at that point putting the two together and making a public library that is part of the GMS project? And I understand that it would end up restricting some of the hours during school time. However, then it would also open you up to, if you have a summertime activity and it rains, guess what? You got a gym. But then the kids can run around and you can take more capacity and things of that nature. Is it even possible? Is that even something that the
Where-
school board would consider to go ahead and try to make
It is. I mean, I don't know if anybody's reached out to you specifically,
No, they haven't.
but yeah, in talking with, in reviewing designs and in talking with the architect and the designers, I mean, nothing is off the table at this point.
I've brought that up several times during our school facilities meeting that whatever the future state of GMS looks like, there has to be community components to that. Whether we've spent time talking about talent, whether it's the library, that's going to get the buy-in for that particular project. But I think these other facilities that we're talking about greatly benefit from that as well. If it is a thoughtful community and school-oriented facility, whatever
And that's
that
the
looks like.
goal. I mean, I was just telling JD at the meeting last night. The architect presented, and basically we're starting now at this point with community outreach, and we want to hear everybody's ideas. And our first community listening night is scheduled. We scheduled it last night for November 2nd at CHS at 6:30. And so we invite everybody to come and attend and kind of listen to it. It's more for them to get an idea of what this community wants to see in their. They kept saying a reimagined GMS, and what that looks like and what it doesn't look like and what works for our town. So I encourage everybody to come to that and provide some input. And we're really going to listen and take all of that into consideration.
Has there ever been conversations historically around warrant articles connected to the library facility or capital improvement projects?
I understand where you're coming from, but I think that the mission of the Aaron Cutler trustees is going to be to protect Aaron Cutler. If you want to have the input of the voters, you would have to have a warrant article.
Yeah.
Do we continue to support the library, in which case this is the budget and we go with it? You said you want it, we move forward. If the vote comes out, we would like to explore something else, but that's the will of the voters. So I think the reality is we can talk about the budget impacts, but that's to decide what we do next. This is not necessarily the place. I think the warrant article is next.
I agree with that.
Fair point.
So one last question. What do you think that the library patron feedback would be if there was not availability during the school day? How much pushback would you get from the patrons?
If there would be absolutely no availability during the school day, then we couldn't have story time. We couldn't do a lot of most of our programming, really. I mean, so it would just depend on how this.
Right, how it would incorporate.
Right. I know at one point it was, and I don't know what you've been talking about, if it's a combined school public library. When we talked at the capital improvement time, that was still the public library, just like tacked onto the building so that we could share infrastructure.
Right.
So it would
You have
still
security
be.
issues, people coming in and out.
You could, but
kids
there are ways around that too.
Yeah.
You can have
Right.
Lots
I
of
mean,
other
you wouldn't be
Yeah,
able to
yeah.
go into it. So
But
it depends
that's
on what.
This is the time to
situation,
start thinking
right.
about all that.
Yes.
Before we start diving into design and
So now we're talking 2 buildings?
No, I'm sure there's a way
No,
you
it's-
can segregate it so you can still have story time.
Right.
I think it would be interesting for if you have availability to join that
Mm.
session at CHS on November 6th,
Yep.
right? That's the date?
Second.
Second, November
Second.
2nd, because
Yeah.
that's a good opportunity to start to, talk to the people
Right.
who are listening
Mhm.
about the needs of the town.
I'll
Yeah,
put
same
that
goes
on my
for-
calendar.
For recreation, and if that's something that we can incorporate, and it's a huge ticket item for the town, and if the more kind of I'd hate to use birds, and the more, what is it, two birds in one stone, the more birds we can hit with one stone, I think eventually that benefits the
Bird in hand is better
That's-
than
that
two in
was
the bush.
very morbid, and I
You talk about hitting birds, you're gonna have conservation.
I know.
What time is that session on November
6:30.
2nd? Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for library this evening?
It looks like it's about 260,000 in salary and benefits and about 50,000 in everything else, which is books and
Right.
fuel and everything else. So it's a pretty darn good budget, I think.
Mr. Hayes?
Yep, it's all good.
All good.
I don't
All
say
right,
that
sir.
often.
All right, thank you very much for presenting this evening.
Thank you.
Tab that was on there, the last one, the budget worksheet for that.
Yeah. That was helpful, right?
Yeah.
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 What's next?
Well, I know we have cemeteries on the docket this evening. We have information technology still, mosquito, and general government facilities,
All right.
as well as 4140 town clerk.
Let's do let's see, where is cemeteries 4195.
Cemeteries 4195.
Darn
Looks
water
like-
again.
Looks like the bottom line increase here is $97. We've increased the water and increased groundskeeping by $25.
Did we receive the bid on groundskeeping?
The cemetery trustees are really in charge of this, and they've not gone out to bid. However, the contractor that they use, as I understand, at one point in time, this was put out to bid, and the contractor, they just keep renewing the contract.
Yeah, I think they said last year it was like so specialized that it's a hassle to mow. So only one guy was willing to do it because you have to go around the headstones and.
As a
trim it
local
up nice.
contractor, it's not, a lot of contractors, from what we've been told, really don't want
Well, it's one thing to cut a big
maintain
opening
the
to get
cemeteries,
grass.
because it's not that typical landscaping job where you are showing up and zip, zip, zip. It's uneven terrain, and
Yeah, there's a lot of finish work.
And they had somebody, but they were destroying a lot of things that were in there. So that's why they went with the guy that they have now.
and there's some real advantage to having a contractor that has experience and builds a relationship with the cemetery trustees and understands the operation, like just coordinating with the different, burials and seasonal events that go on.
Straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Any questions on cemeteries? Mr. Hayes?
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Let's see, where's mosquito?
4411.
4411.
4411.20. Oops, I went too far.
Oh, sorry. I put this together in July, and I'm trying to
Covering this area?
think of winding us down. But what happened here was we had a decrease in the contract in 2021, but by the time the budget was approved and everything, we still had the old number there. So the 28.5 is actually represents the contract price for it's flat. It was last year's 2021 budget as well. So what happened was we had a little competition. One of the members that was part of this company broke off and started a business. And so we had both companies kind of reaching out to us and ended up in, we were able to stay with our company that we've had for many years, but we ended up in a savings.
Nice.
And he held that price for 2022.
Okay. Any questions on Mosquito District 4411? Mr. Hayes?
No questions.
Thank you. All right, Mr. Brown.
Okay. So I think if we go to our general government,
4194.
and then after this one, I think IT. Bottom line here for general government, we're showing an increase of $19,363. A big chunk of that's being driven by energy costs. But we'll start at the top. The custodian, the $750 increase, just capturing what the current wages are and the 18-hour work week that person's working now. We're projecting an increase in electric of $1,850, but it is important to note that we are taking on 2 of the radio communication towers, and we won't have any historical, costs until like next year when we're sitting here. So, but we've anticipated the cost for that electrical increase to run those towers.
Aren't there 3? We'll get to that with IT.
No, there is 3.
Okay.
There's
It's actually 4.
There's actually
Okay.
4. So one is a private site.
Yeah, one's a private site. The other site is actually shared with the cable studio, so it's already captured in the cable studio numbers.
Okay.
And then there's the 2 sites that are freestanding, which is Memorial and then Rocky Hill.
Okay.
Next one is a propane gas. Again, we're trying to, basically, we've had that discussion being driven by the increase in propane costs. Our water charges are up $840, $146 for the meeting house. That's the old town hall. That is offset 100% in revenue because the historical society, they'll reimburse us for the cost. That's part of the lease agreement. They lease the building for $1, but they take care of the electrical cost. And no changes anywhere. Gasoline is probably the greatest hit here. Just calculating our usage at 17,700 gallons is our guess, and using our forecast, the short-term forecaster, there's a link. The gasoline, if you put your mouse over that, you'd see. I'm sorry, that's the usage. But if you put your mouse over the
I like
limited-
that, by the way. Thanks for
yeah.
that.
So what I've done is I've just used that as my guess of what fuel is going to cost. I can tell you right now, I just paid a bill today for regular fuel, and I believe it's $3.05 a gallon. So we're projecting using this, outlook at $2.75 a gallon.
So question on that, Troy. I thought our gas price per gallon excludes taxes.
It does exclude.
So you got 305
So
excluding taxes?
we're still, yeah. So unfortunately, one of the problems is that we're also paying for the transport. We're a small user, so we're paying for the service of having this, the truck come and deliver to our site. We're not paying a tax, but we're still paying that service to have it delivered. So I find that I always watch it because they come here once a week, and we're almost paying about the same as you would at the pump.
At what point does it make sense to put in our own?
No, I mean, we have our own,
Right.
Okay.
but
At what point does it make sense to work on a deal with with one of the local gas stations though?
there was some discussion of maybe a gas station coming to town, and I was having some discussions because part of that proposal, they were going to have commercial tanks and have the commercial card system. And so there's the possibility that project still could occur one day in this town. And that would be an excellent location for us to look at seriously, to convert over to a commercial account.
Maybe we need a town sponsored one.
So did that project get
West
tabled?
Road, going to West Road, it's with the equipment, the heavy duty equipment you have, plow trucks, front end loaders, backhoes, and the fire equipment. It adds some time and work on trying to fuel up these vehicles, but
So is 275 too low?
I'm
I
a little nervous about
mean,
that.
if you're at 305 and it's
I'm a
October,
little nervous about that, but I just consistently, I'm trying to use some data point. And so diesel, I've got 309, and then I think they changed the price today on it because I was looking at it, it's 308, and the unleaded fuel they have 275.
Well, that might be something we revisit as a committee as we
We'll have to. This is
get a little bit later in the season.
downsize. It means it has to come from somewhere else. So be prepared to make that adjustment. Add it here and subtract it somewhere else. So
Okay. One other question on the communication tower equipment. Why are only 2 of 4 online?
All 4 are online.
Oh,
I give a committee update.
okay. All right.
4 are online.
Any other questions on general government buildings?
not right now.
Mr. Hayes? Okay, hearing none. Thank you very much. I think next up is IT, 4150.
Oh, good Lord.
So if the committee would like, I can give an update on the communications tower first, and then I can go into my overview for the budget. So to answer the question, the communications towers went into service at the end of May for both fire and police. And then DPW went into service September timeframe. So everything is 100% functioning. As you can probably imagine, building 4 freestanding sites with steel and construction during a pandemic was a little bit challenging. Cost overruns were crazy, but we did it. It's done. The reports from the departments has been a significant 10x improvement in communications from portables to mobiles. So it's been a good investment in the system. As Troy said, the 2 free sites, which are Rocky Hill, which is our primary transmitting site, and our what we call our rotor site, that's up on Rocky Hill. That is powered by, we service it. It's also generator backed up. Second site is Roy Memorial. That is our second electrical site. Hopefully with a grant, we'll get a generator put in there also. And then the third site is down at the Old Town Hall, actually off of the cable building. So it kind of shares what's already in place down there. And then the fourth site is a commercial site, which is on Morgan Road, which is the Verizon Tower site. We get the benefit of being in there as a guest. So that's how that works. But we're just getting ready to wrap up the overall project. The sites are going through what they call their Motorola audit or the communications audit. Once that is done, it's signed and turned over to us 100%. And that does start the warranty service. We have a year of warranty. They'll come in and fix anything that's broke. After that year, we have to put it into some kind of a maintenance program. In my budget, I do have a line that says it is $0 because we don't know what it is yet. I've been getting estimates of anywhere between $15,000 to $25,000 a year. And that maintenance program is all encompassing. Every tower is inspected twice a year. It's tested, it's validated, and then brought back. So it's a labor-intensive program. We've never done that in this town, but we've never had this many sites. And most of our sites have been disparate because we're sharing sites now. each department is benefiting for that. And, it's now maintained well. So I don't know if there's any questions about it.
What was the project? I guess I wasn't familiar with it.
So the town voted to replace our aging communication system across the 3 departments. In the past, the departments had 3 separate disparate systems. Aging, I think the oldest system was about 26 years old. Parts and stuff were not available anymore. And so
They
we
didn't
basically
talk to each other well.
Yeah, and they didn't talk well. They couldn't communicate well. The system we put in place was to try to address a lot of those challenges, but also improve overall coverage. There's many places in town, police could not get back to dispatch, fire could not communicate to a guy in the truck next to
Including
him.
at the school.
Yeah, at the school, we put in a special system for the school. Well, it actually benefits the DPW from a town perspective, but the school can sign on to it also. We now have an SRO officer in school that actually can communicate back to dispatch and be able to raise dispatch. So that's one of the major improvements from the school's perspective. So we're still expanding on that system. We have room to bring other services on that system. So that's the overall. But like I said, I never thought the pandemic was going to hit. And, towers got lost coming from Canada. Nothing showed up. Contractors didn't show up. Fence costs has tripled. The fence down at Roy Memorial, yeah, it's a lot more than I thought it was going to be. But my quotes were $3,000. 3 times that was what the final cost was. So we're dealing with that. But overall, like I said, it's done, and I'm happy with it. There's always room for improvement. We'll work the kinks out of it, but for now, it's been doing really, really well. So,
Okay, thank you for the update.
The cost overruns, was that just paid for out of the existing budget, or did that end up getting rolled into the lease payments?
no, so the bond, the lease payment, or what was approved by the voters, is set, and that's set. We can't do anything about that. The board had granted us some additional. When we knew we were running over, the board was able to fund additional funding. We're still going to run a little bit more than that. I like to say when I originally started this project, it was $1.2 million. But I think we were talking about at one point, I had it 750 and I lowered it to 700. If I left it at 750, I would have been really happy. But we'll get through that. There is funds in our tech fund that kind of help that. I'm also hoping, like I said, a grant will come in that may help offset some of those costs. But we'll know. I have a feeling I won't be able to close the whole project till probably middle of next year from a funding perspective. But
When are we going to know the maintenance cost line item?
next year.
So that won't be an impact.
It's not this year. Yeah. Like I said, we'll be writing the warranty. We also bought serviceable parts. So we actually have a lot of the expense already in the project. It's just the labor associated with the inspection and stuff like that had to be factored in.
Yep.
Okay.
So how much were the overruns that came out of this budget?
Came out of this budget? It
Yeah.
came out of the last year's budget.
Okay, and how much was that? Like
The board of
ballpark?
the board of selectmen authorized me additional $35,000.
Okay.
Right now, it looks like I'm going to overrun that by about 19. So, and again, most of that was, if you think about Rocky Hill, the Rocky Hill site was the unexpected. When we originally started that site, the proposal was to put the construction of the antennas up on top of the water tank. Unfortunately, we didn't know this, and even Penetrac didn't know it when they granted us the rights to do that. The town did not tell Penetrac at the time, 10 years ago or so, when they agreed to put that tank in place, to actually put the construction that was required for the top to do it. So we had to pivot and come off the tank and build a freestanding 100-foot tower. As you can imagine, Rocky Hill is a mountain. It's all bedrock. We had to go in and clean all the rock out, dental clean all the rocks, fill it so that they will support the tower. It cost me an additional $8,000 just in engineering to put the tower up there. So those are the things we ran into not knowing. If everything went as originally planned and as agreed to as we went through the budget process, and we can do this, put it on the tower, do this, that, it would have been fine. But and then addition, because additional the cost of the tower and the overruns because of the cost of the metal, that's what ran on running the numbers up. Just dental cleaning the bedrock was $6,000. That was to get a water vacuum up there to do all that. And that's all very labor intensive. And that was happening during the middle of winter. So that was another case of it, right? We didn't want to slow the project down because we were already behind a deadline. We had failing systems that weren't working. We had to get the system up and running. So we did the best we could do.
So, Mr. Brown, obviously a $90,000 hit that was unexpected. What did the town have to either cut or not do to offset that $90,000?
It wasn't a $90,000 hit.
I thought that's what the total.
It was 30, it was 30,000.
35.
35,000 was granted and there's an additional 19,000.
Oh, 19,000.
Yeah, so as I said in my commentary was if I stuck to my guns instead at 750 as I originally, I would have been fine.
Okay.
But like I said, when you look at the site and you do the pre-walkthrough and everything's agreed, okay, we can do all of that and the cost is minimal to do it. And then you finally have to pivot and actually build the tower in its place and then run into all the bedrock issues and all that. That causes that construction overrun. So,
But it's a good question. I mean, where do you find these funds? And in 2020 and 2021, we've had funding that's unanticipated. In 2020, obviously, I think we received about $200,000 of reimbursement for fire, police, all that COVID-related cost. And that's, as you recall, that freed up a lot of money in 2020, where we did a lot of things like this, and we took some other things out of the proposed 2021 budget and paid for it in 2020. But that was a one-time opportunity because we received that COVID reimbursement, funding through the CARES Act.
I think it's just something to think about. We've heard tonight that there's a $60,000 line item was earlier tonight, but there was a $60,000 pay down of next year's budget.
Oh yeah.
Right. And now we're talking about a $15,000 to $25,000 maintenance contract potentially for next year. Right. So just with those two items coming back into the budget for next year.
There's currently
and the
a
tax cap.
there's currently a 0 line item for IT manager contract, so that's not accurate, is it?
that's good. Well, in that budget, we reorganized appropriately, but things fell in. So when I received the contract, it went to an actual accounting account 110, I think. So it got moved out.
That was
Where is
for
it now?
21. It's in there for 22.
Oh.
Yeah. In 21 it was. Yeah, 21 was carried in the contract line.
So now it's an employee of the town?
It always has been, but yes,
Yes, but
it's a part-time employee.
I remember the original discussion that the reason we got it in that way is because it was a contracted position and not an employee, because an employee would have had to go before the voters. Which is so tight.
I would prefer not to continue to talk about my employment in this town.
I'm just
I
saying.
have been doing this job for 12 years, and every year this committee beats the snot out of me for it.
Well, again, I beat the snot out of the school board for pulling the
I
same
appreciate
kind of
that.
stunts.
I appreciate
So
that.
if I'm going to be consistent, I'm going to have to say something about this, which will tie back again to the conversation we're going to have shortly about another line item. So again, to me,
Is there a budget related question here?
I would rather see it under contracts, because then it's to me, this is a workaround of what the voters have expected, and it's disappointing. There's no budget related other than it's not the way we should be doing things in this town.
The board made a decision last year to define the position as an employee. It had been, I don't think it was very clear as whether it was a contract or an employee. And I was very concerned about this, brought it to the Board of Selectmen and said it needed to be addressed because we were walking a fine line. If you ever had any types of benefit claims, workers' comp claims, and looking at the position, everything that it was doing clearly showed that it was a part-time employee.
I agree with you.
And I'm just being upfront and honest. And so the Board of Selectmen last year made it official and had an employment agreement. And this is the second year of that employment agreement.
So from principal perspective, I absolutely agree. I agreed on day one that this was in a new position, which is why it really upset me when it went to contract, because it was a workaround to what the voters expect in this town. So now it's just full circled going around the voters. It's disappointing. And it's clearly not you, because I don't think you were here at the time, but the concerns that were raised back then have now come to fruition. It's just like
I think the concerns in 2003 are very different from the concerns in 2020. And I think that the select board and the school district have the authorization as the legislative bodies in this community to make those decisions. And I think that sometimes they need to be made in a timely manner and cannot wait for a warrant article on the ballot.
And that is your opinion, and you are entitled to it, and I will respectfully disagree.
All right. Any other questions? Well, let's go through the budget further.
I have this great overview I was going to get to. All right, so I'll go through the high levels. I'll kind of highlight what the increases or decreases are, and I'll explain it. And I'll more than happy to welcome a line by line question and answering. So the requested budget is $173,692. It does represent an increase of $39,864 over last year's budget, and I'll explain where it comes from because it's not as significant as we all think. Well, it is significant, but there's a reason for it. The factors for the increase are mainly my contract, which represents the second year of the contract that was approved last year. That contract was presented to the budget committee last year, so I'm not sure why we're having the conversation this year. Placing back, this budget represents the placing back the 2020 pre-buys that happened last year. Again, we had extra revenues because of the COVID investments that the government made for us. We will pull a bunch of stuff out of the 2021 budget. So we're putting back in the $14,187, which is basically two programs. That's our yearly computer lifecycle program for the town wide, and also our police department mobile data terminals, which is the computers in the cruisers. We replaced two. We're on a program right now to replace 6 of them, 2, and 2. We did 2 last year. We did 2 this year, and then 2 the following year. Additionally, we have to reintroduce a hardware and software maintenance contract for our storage array. If the committee will remember, about 3 years ago, we purchased a brand new array. That array came with 3 years of service and maintenance. That contract is up middle of next year. So that represents a $3,708 increase for a winter contract. There's been some increase in consumables. As you can imagine, every station has a UPS and battery. Those batteries are starting to fail. I'm in a 3-year cycle. I got a significant amount of batteries. In addition, I have failed UPSs that have to be replaced. So these are all portable ones, but they're several $100 a pop every time it happens. Any of the larger batteries that we carry, which are in the 2 main closets we have to control all of the major compute power we have for the town, those are several $1,000 batteries when they come. So that increase, that is over the typical $1,000 I carry is a $2,710 increase. Last one will be Microsoft Office for the police department. As everybody probably knows, we use Google services for pretty much everything we do. It's pretty mainstream, all of our productivity tools. But the police department is sort of unique. They deal with a lot of other agencies that are very standardized on Microsoft Word. And we're kind of at this point, we're stuck where we need to bring Word back into the system for a while because of that interoperability that we have to have. Every time you get a state warrant, it comes from the state, it's in a format, it doesn't get into the Google Drive correctly. It takes hours for them to clean it up. And it's, to be honest, the amount of hours I spend just doing word processing, fixing, it's just going to be a whole lot easier to deal with that for that time being, for that small set of folks. And again, that represents a $2,750 increase. So in total, that's $23,355 of that $39,000 plus increase I referenced above. The other factors are include our Google services. Our usage is increasing. Every committee member has access. That's how we share and we collaborate during meetings and so on. So the usage is going up. Over last year's cost, it's $1,310 is what the projected cost is. In addition, we pay per seat. So every time we put somebody in, some years we get half years, we get credits and back pay and kind of that kind of thing. But we're going to hit a 1310 increase next year because of the numbers we're using and assuming now. Addition, in fact, is a request, and it's an add to what we don't have today. We need to improve the computer monitors that we have in our police department. There are several workstations that do a lot of evidentiary kind of reviews that require wider screens, and so we need to kind of introduce a couple of wider screens in the environment. And that's that $4,250 for those that increase. So that's a net new. It's a need, and it's something we should be doing.
So each monitor's $850.
It's a 30-inch wide screen. Yeah.
I feel like I got a 30-inch for a lot less than that myself.
It's a high def 30-inch, and because of the when they're looking at evidentiary, like for example, they do a cell phone dump and they get all this data, and they need to be able to look at it side by side, kind of through it. So it's a really a real estate issue at this point. They currently have what I would say is standard monitors. I can do doubles, but that just causes more space in the areas they don't have space. If you've been over there, there's not very much space over there.
I guess my question is, does it have to be a computer monitor as opposed to like one of those TVs that can serve as both?
The problem with
Those are a
TVs,
lot
the problem with TVs, they don't have the high def, they don't have the pixel count that you need. So that's why we go to a standard monitor grade monitor. And it's most TVs are I think you can go 38, 39, and 45 or 42, but they take up a lot more space. And they're also, the resolution is different, right? So these are ultra wides. They're 16 by 9s versus 4 by 3s of the typical TV. So, and that's an estimate. And I have to tell you, computer costs, even on my line we put back in this year, I'm holding where it is. I don't think I'll get 5 out of it because I displaced the order for last year and the cost is just out of control.
Will you even get them though? The price in a container, like San
I
Francisco Bay.
have some that are still, I ordered them back in May. They're not expected to be delivered till December.
Oh, I believe it.
And anything I order now, I'm seeing 3 to 5 to 7% increases in cost, and it continues to go up.
And that's before it even lands in port.
Right.
No, I completely understand.
So the other thing is that one of the increases that virtual meeting platform, as you know, we've been hosting meetings in WebEx. We got a CARES funding last year, so it was zero net to us, but we want to maintain that service. That's good. That's costing us $21.49 for the year, and that allows us to have several meetings. We can hold up meetings with 1,500 people on it, participating the whole 9 yards if we have to go back into a lockdown remote mode again. And there's one big new request in here, and I think you may have heard the Rec Commission made it. If you watched the selectmen's meeting, I kind of talked it through a little bit. But one of the things we're trying to accomplish is the pandemic showed a lot of things. Having paper and people needing to come in and filling stuff out was just, we had to pivot a lot. We made a lot of quick forms. It's like we want to bring in a form platform that allows us to actually automate or present online access to almost everything you want to do in the town and transact. If you want to do tax map request, you can fill it out. You get sent to the right person. They acknowledge it. It comes back. It's basically a whole workflow system. And that increase I'm asking for is $6,700 for the year. And it's a yearly charge, unfortunately, but it is something that we currently use a free version of it, which is going to allow us to automate a lot of workflow within the police department and fire. But it's missing that one aspect, which is basically called the approval module to allow us to actually, as a citizen has my mailbox taken down in the wintertime, I can go online, fill out my complaint form, submit it. That user gets an acknowledgement back exactly what they said, that it was received by the town, and it's now been routed right to the road agent. He can accept it, and they'll get acknowledged back that that's been accepted, and that when they'll come out and repair the mailbox, versus the 14 phone calls to Facebook complaints that are up there and so on and so forth. So the idea with this is that take what we've already been doing and expand it so that it is much more tracked and controlled and managed than it is today. Like I said, I field probably 14 emails coming off the website itself that goes to the just asking general questions that if they could fill it out, select the right kind of area of concern and get it routed the right way, that would cut back on the delay for the public getting any kind of details and information, but also again, help them understand that we're seeing it and we're responding to it. And additionally, internally, it allows us to even automate things like our time card systems. Today, people fill out spreadsheets, we pass them in. No, it's paper we get assigned. This will allow our employees to fill out their timesheet, route it to their department head. They approve it. It goes right in the payroll. It's approved. There's no emails, no 30 emails, no one coming in and have to fill things out. So that's part of the things we'll try to do for the internal side of the house too. So that's that. So that results in the $14,409. And I do define it as new requests and expansion. And the expansion part is the Google and service growth that's there. So that actually results in a bottom line increase of $37,764, meaning $2,100 of that is actual, usage has gone up, phone costs gone up, things like that. Okay. And a little bit, I think part of my contract has gone up a little bit too. So as I said, I'm happy to walk through any of the lines of the individual budget line items if there's any questions. As I said, my wages got moved out of the contract line into the normal wages line. As of last year, it's now been carried in 1110. That's why you'll see a reduction in the contract that's actually shown up on top. And this is as a note, because we talked about me being an employee of this town. On 40 weeks of an average, I get paid for 24 hours a week. I work 36 and higher. I track my hours because I think it's kind of interesting. But I hope people realize that there's a benefit.
I'm not saying it's not a benefit, and I'm not arguing what you get paid. I don't like how it got in there to begin with. It was a contract because we couldn't get it approved by voters, so now it's back to where we couldn't get it. I don't like the process. That's all. I'm not saying that it's not a value to the town. I don't like the process. That's all.
John, actually, I have a budget question.
Yeah.
On the online forms,
Yes.
there's really not going to be anything that we can save in terms of reduction of overtime or staff expense or anything like that. Basically, this is all just
Streamline.
customer service.
It's customer service and streamline. Yeah.
What would be really the difference between if somebody's going to have to find this form when their mailbox gets bashed, right?
Mhm.
On that, they're going to have to find that page in that form somewhere.
Yep.
Why wouldn't we just have the road agent's email there and say, email the road agent?
Because there's no acknowledgement back 90% a lot of times. The road agent's on the road. He may not see that email for, let's say he's in a large storm. He may not see the email for a couple days, right?
Sure.
Or it's buried. This way, like I said, it's in that example, the resident fills it out. They get acknowledged, but that has been received by the town. It's been put in, it's been notified the road agent. Donna, who actually tracks those things, it updates the database that we have that shows that they reported it. So when they call in, yep, we have it. We're heavy on the schedule. We're going to take care of it. When it's completed, they'll get acknowledgement that it was actually finished and done. Last year, we had a form online that I wrote really quick in Google Docs that worked out fairly well, but it was one way. They just submitted it. They didn't get acknowledgement back. This allows us to do that, and that got used pretty heavily too.
An autoresponder in Gmail would also give them an acknowledgement that, hey, somebody got it. I guess when all of a sudden we get hit with, and I understand, you get the 3 years maintenance up front, and then at that point you have to start paying the annual maintenance afterwards. It's just, okay, so when we have other increases like that, is adding $6,700 for a personal acknowledgement that somebody's received it, is that the right time and the right value of customer satisfaction for $6,700?
Yeah, that's just an example. There's other things we can do with it. I actually think there's a bigger benefit to the town itself and its internal operations to streamline and remove a lot of the manual efforts that go through. Like I said, even payroll is the biggest one. I manage the cable committee, and I deal with their payroll every Monday. I get 4 spreadsheets that I got to convert to PDF and sign, and get it sent. When they fill out the timesheet, I get an email that says, please approve. I approve it, and it's now going to payroll. That's 4 less steps than I got to deal with on a Sunday night or a Monday. That's distracting from doing something else, right? I feel that that's the same around the rest of the department. When we streamlined, the fire department had a log. It was a paper log. They had to come back to the station, fill out the paper log. We put it online. They're doing it on their phones as they're getting off the truck, heading back home, right? So it's just making things much more seamless. And like I said, with the system, it'll allow us to brand it, allow us to get the approval module, the ARC back, the full redundancy. I think there's a huge benefit. I think it will pay dividends. Yes, it looks like an expense today. Will it save us time? It could save the back office a lot of time. To allow them to get other things done they can't get done today because they're doing whatever, right?
Last question on that one. Mm-hmm. Is this a upfront
it's a
expense,
yearly,
or is this a SaaS expense that we're going to?
It's a SaaS expense. Okay. That's a estimated yearly cost.
Got it.
Is the office? Is that you buying office, or is that $250?
Haven't decided yet, but yeah. So we can buy it in subscription and pay it year over year. I can buy one time, and hopefully 3 years will get me out of it, and then I got to buy it again, or we get away from it altogether. I do have other office locations that are using it in small pockets too, so I may try to roll it into a subscription and keep it at that cost, but I'd like to see it go away altogether. And my own goal was never to have office put back in this building. And I did well for 10 years, but I have, like I said, the police department is my bane of my existence. So,
Okay.
So I don't know if there's any questions. I'm happy to explore the line by lines.
Any questions for Mr. Brunel? Mr. Hayes, giving you an opportunity.
Oh, he's muted again.
Okay. And that will close IT for this evening. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate the presentations,
John.
So last up was an addition to tonight's agenda on 4140 Town Clerk.
Or do we want to do revenues?
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. We had revenues this evening as well. My apology.
Yeah, I don't care which one we do first.
Revenues. Let's go
Jump
for
into
it.
revenues.
Yep.
There's no number there. It's just at the bottom. You found there's no account number. You found it? Yeah. So we really took a good look at revenues this year. Last year was a tough year trying to forecast. We didn't know what the pandemic, what kind of impact it would have on our revenues. We were very concerned about it. So far this year, what we budgeted for revenues are holding strong, coming in right about where we expected them to come in. Tweaking where we're at today and trying to, again, forecast out, 12 months from now. We're looking at an additional $55,890 that we anticipate we could collect. And in those areas, some of the adjustments just start at the top. Timber taxes, we have, we're proposing to increase that from $500 a year to $2,000. And that's being driven by just taking a look at, what's the actuals have been over the past couple years. It's one of those items where timber taxes, it all depends. It's all driven by people clearing property and building houses. It's not something you want to overestimate, but pretty confident with everything going on that we'll definitely see a collection of $2,000 in 2022. The land use change tax, again, so when you're clearing land and the thought process is you're not just harvesting the timber. Most of the time you're clearing land and you're going to be converting that land to another type of use. Primarily in this town, it's residential. And when you do that, if your land is in the current use program, when it comes out of that program, it's taxed at 10% of the current market value. And that's what generates those revenues. We have a formula where we share with that revenue, 80% of it goes directly to the Conservation Commission and 20% comes to the town. The $35,000 represents the 20%. Payment in lieu of taxes for the town of Hudson. We just took a look at what we actually received the last time we sent a tax bill. And so that's why you see this number of $25,494.
So what happened there? Because last year we estimated 30.
I don't know. I think this year I went and pulled the actual tax bill and I said, well, instead of estimating, why don't we pull what we collected?
I'm just thinking everybody's tax bills went up.
Yeah.
So how come Hudson got to go down?
That was the actual. So
What is this actually for?
So this is their, the town of Hudson owns the two wells, and then there's a building that's there on that site. And so towns are actually exempt from paying property taxes, to another town. So what happens is that this town, long before me, sat down and made this, they call it a pilot, but it's a payment in lieu of taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And it's an agreement that they'll pay a full tax.
Okay.
So it's part of our tax software. It's whatever the property's assessed at, a property tax is generated.
So this is for
Sometimes it
this
can
is
be
for the
generated.
property off of Colonial.
Yeah, it can be, negotiated.
I got it. All right.
Excavation tax, adjusting that up $1,000 from last year's $3,000. Motor vehicles, the next big change, trying to capture the strong market that we're receiving and people registering cars. So I've always been, pretty conservative here, but the last couple of years we've been, trying to get right on, in the ballpark, still conservative, but we're pretty comfortable increasing that an additional 28,000 for 2022.
What's the actual for this year?
To date, received to date, I think we're at rate just above 1.5 million right now. And that would be, September numbers. We're pretty strong.
Going back to the excavation, timber, land use tax, things of that
Yep.
nature. I think it's probably next week that we hit the tab that we dread, which is fire hydrants and things of that nature. I mean, at this point, is there thought around trying to get the revenues to help offset that behemoth of a hit that we have in terms of like fire hydrants and things of that nature? Because if this is for, being able to build out new developments and things like that, we know we're going to get hit with a big bill. Can we do something in order to, again, those that are going to develop that land need to help support the build out of the infrastructure for that land in order to support the community?
Well, the revenues that are generated in these categories, the timber tax, the land use change tax, and the excavation tax, those are all driven by the state. There's certain
we don't have the ability to say
we don't control the fee for that. So
how do we jack impact?
I think he's talking impact fees and how do you make sure to capture that funding, those expenses in the impact fee?
So the impact fees is, not part of the general fund. That's a separate program. And we have, typically right now, a house generates anywhere from $8,000 up to about $12,000 in total impact fees. And then it's broken up $8,000 to $12,000.
Right.
But in that is school portions, recreation, fire, police.
Is there a statutory limit as to how much we could charge? Just because
It's all tied into your the methodology study that was done, and a lot of that is tied to the capital improvements plan, but not 100%. So it's not. There's a process that the town went through, and it took about 2.5 years prior to my time. The planning board, I understand, worked really hard on it for about 2.5 years with a consultant, and they came up with. They have to do an analysis based on the capital needs of the community that's adopted in the plan, but also they look at national standards of deficiencies. So for like the library, they're sitting there saying, okay, a library should have X amount of square feet to meet the demands of your community today. And somehow through their little mathematical formulas, they determine what the cost is for the new development, what the impact would be on a building that's already deficient. So that impact for the new house isn't as great as a facility like the school, who's already, what we've learned in the high school, when we did the methodology, the high school had already gone out and built a facility and had planned for growth. So we're able to, the impact fees that are collected for schools, for at least the high school, is what we consider recoupment. And that money can come in and be used, pretty much for any capital improvement for the school that has a 5-year life expectancy. I don't know if I answered your question actually, but
you gave me the insight. Ultimately,
there's a methodology that we use, and in order to just increase the collection of fees, you have to go back and do a new study. So I will tell you that we had a capital improvements committee meeting Monday night, and we had this discussion and said, it's time to go back and revisit our impact fee study.
Yeah, now that we have had put 40, 60 houses in,
So what it seems is that within this town, every new development that goes in, then at that point we end up losing, the expense is much more than even what we try to grab in the beginning to offset the impact. I mean, what the school then at that point, if they've got a kid or two, then all of a sudden, we're not even close. Never mind the infrastructure. Now we need a bigger fire station. We need a bigger police station. We need more hydrants. We need this. We need that. And all of a sudden, it actually doesn't make sense financially for us to allow more building in this town.
It doesn't.
But how do you get revenue then? Because people don't want to pay more taxes, so therefore we have to figure out a way to be able to get more revenue. Now, people say, let's get
It is the biggest.
commercial properties in here, but
Yeah.
then based on last year, it seemed like Terry had said that, you know what, the best ones to get in are the ones that we go ahead and get trucks and vehicles. Vehicle
Yeah.
registration is probably our best thing. So who has the most trucks?
Yeah.
Let's get them.
You don't want,
as-
and you don't want trucks, right?
We said no to them like 30 years ago, actually.
It's,
Right?
I don't know areas where you can increase that type of revenue.
I mean,
Really,
the
you're
school's
talking
not
about,
charging
you're
for
talking about
anything.
residential development and where can we collect revenue? And, so initially right out of the gate, I've got building permit fees that can be charged from the start of the construction. But those are not going to generate the revenue that you are looking for.
But if you need a new plow truck for a new road, boom, gone. The
That's,
entire neighborhood is not going to cover the cost of that addition. So it's the biggest fallacy is that new properties are going to cover themselves. It just does not happen mathematically.
Right. So then do you raise the fees high enough that then at that point it deters people from putting in new development? So therefore we don't take on more expenses.
That's not something for this board to address, but it does go back to the question of making sure that our impact fees actually capture the actual impact.
So back to revenue.
Go for it.
So I had wrapped up motor vehicles, building permit fees. I'm actually
Did
a little concerned about building permit fees for 2022. We've seen our subdivisions wrap up now. Firefly, the Weatherstone, those are completed 100%. We're actually in the process now. We'll be accepting roads for those subdivisions this fall. And we don't have any approved subdivisions that I'm aware of that's in the pipeline. So I think you're going to see more of just the single homes being developed on lots that you didn't know existed. And you've seen that randomly
Or
throughout your
additions,
town.
expansions.
So
We talked last year about increasing the fees for permits. Did that occur or are they still?
it was put on hold when Inspector Dion passed and we just put everything on hold, but that's definitely Inspector Blackwell. We've had that discussion and we definitely will be looking at it.
So if I'm going to put an addition in, I want to pull my permit soon, is what you're saying? Okay. Duly noted.
Let's see here. Revenue from the state is,
Wasn't there discussion?
it was the
about
highway
increasing-
block grant, $10,000. So based on the information we have received, it does look like that we'll have the highway block grant funds restored to that $200,000 level. We had decreased it last year to 190, and it we'll have the tax rate set here in the next 4 to 6 weeks, and that's when we're told exactly what that number will be.
People still get pistol permits?
They do, yeah.
Because you don't need one anymore,
Out
right?
of state, if you want to get recognized for out of state.
Troy, I don't see anything about revenue from the federal relief packages or anything like that. Has the town received word about any additional funding that you anticipate receiving in the next year?
Yeah, that would be, so it's going to come in, that will be treated as unanticipated funds. And captured and set into an account as a grant, and used for that specific purpose.
Okay.
But isn't that number somewhere around $900,000?
It's around 905,000. Yes. Yeah.
Do you have any of it earmarked for?
So part of the discussion we had Monday night with the budget, with the capital improvements committee, is the Board of Selectmen are asking them to see if they can coordinate that with boards and committees and departments and come up with a recommended plan on how we're going to spend those funds.
Refloor talent hall, done. Found your money.
Can't be. That floor is done.
well, you have to, well,
And so income from other departments, I was just looking at that $950 increase, and that the ZBA variance applications, you'll see 1,750. So we did adjust that. So that's an example of when we sit there and say, hey, this is offset 100% by revenue. So you need to see the revenue. And it needs to be the same number in the budget to have that offset. So we did make that adjustment.
Where do we see police tickets that are issued?
I understand we don't receive that revenue. It goes directly to the state.
Does it really?
Yeah.
really?
Really? Should stop giving tickets then.
And I always see these signs, $250 for littering. Where does that go?
They have to catch it first.
Yeah.
Not that I do it. That's horrible, but yeah, they're silly.
Salt reimbursement for the school. Remember we had some conversation about, the gross amount of tonnage there for this includes money for the school. And we anticipate that because of the increase in tonnage costs that we'll receive $5,000 in reimbursement. So that's up $2,000. So that's a bottom line right now of an estimated increase in our revenues over last year's of $55,890. I just reserve the right to come back and revisit this once we set our tax rate and know what some of these state revenues will be after, in a few.
What is Seymour restitution?
That was, was it your
sore subject?
It was your town. I don't know what it was. It was an official worked for the town, and I think there was some embezzlement that went on
Oh, is this from way back when?
to reimburse the town.
They pay $400 a year.
Yeah,
Whew.
it does. They make the payments still coming.
Huh. Well, good on him for keeping payments going. But I remember, actually, I do remember the headlines when I moved to town. So, okay. Interesting.
So one of the points that was made to the committee last week during public input was, do we forecast revenues correctly, and where is the town getting all of this extra money to make all of these purchases? I mean, we're certainly last year and this year, we will go through our due diligence. We'll make our recommended cuts. We'll have to present a budget underneath the tax cap, but yet seemingly there's still 150, a couple 100,000 extra. We heard coverage of IT equipment overages. We heard of, 3 vehicles being purchased, and where's that money coming from? Revenues is top of mind for me. Is it because we're just so conservative in estimating our revenues that it's leaving all this extra money back in our budget? I don't know. I don't know how to address that, but it's something certainly that I'm thinking about as we start to go, a little bit deeper into this budget.
Is the town not like the school in that it can spend over the budget? The school could get $1 million extra, but they can't spend over that line anyway.
So that's one of the things you do need to understand. That when the budget's approved by the voters, the form that you all sign, we post and everything, there is a schedule of gross appropriations and there's a schedule of estimated revenues. And when that budget's approved, we are not allowed to expend more than what was appropriated.
Okay,
So even if I bring in $1 million of more of revenue, we're not allowed to expend that unless it was unanticipated. And those would be grants that the citizens have already voted and said selectmen are allowed to accept those unanticipated funds and spend them specifically for the purpose of why they are given to the town. But for example, if I budgeted $1.8 million for car registrations and we end up collecting $2 million, the selectmen can't go out and spend another $200,000 that year on police cruisers or fire trucks. That's illegal. The DRA would be down here very quickly. We are held accountable for the appropriations that are approved at the town meeting vote. But there was a lot of good comments that were made on that public, meeting, public comment period at your last meeting. And I didn't have time. I wanted to pull some data together, but I will have time, I believe, to have some data for you at your next meeting, because there's a lot that's happened in the last few years. And for example, when you have $200,000 of COVID relief funding, and then now we have more funding coming. We've had police officers where we've had vacancies for a whole year. One officer has been out for several years because of a military deployment. And, we're budgeting a police officer. When you budget a full year salary, health insurance benefits, and those other costs, and that person doesn't show up to work for a whole year, there are funds that are left. There are spending freezes that we put in. So, I'm going to pull together some data so we can all understand it and understand the growth where we've been. This will be the 7th budget that I've worked on in this town. And I want to go back to 2015 when I started working here in September and really benchmark from there, because that's the territory that I'm familiar with. And look at all the warrant articles that have been approved. I mean, we talk about how our budget's grown, but I take a look at, we've had a fire station bond that just approved for over $200,000. We had a radio communication project for $150,000. We've lease purchased a big plow truck. We've hired and created 2 new police officer positions. We've renewed 2 union contracts.
And that's 10% of your budget right there. Easily.
And there's more. I know I'm forgetting some more things. So we've had fire hydrants increase $200,000. We've had veterans credits that we've adjusted. And I think that's cost this town over $100,000. So I can quickly add up articles that voters have gone to the polls and approved that exceed $750,000, I believe.
Okay.
So I'd like to pull that data together and
I think it's helpful
take
just
a
to
look at
understand,
it and see if there's something we're missing here, because every year I think we all work really hard at trying to put together a budget that meets the needs and is also sensitive to tax stability.
I think that's a good story to tell, to go back to 2015 and say the budget has increased 10, 15, 20%, whatever that looks like. And I think when you combine that story with those warrant articles, it paints the picture of why it has increased. And I think that's something the public needs to know.
That's a great idea.
Yeah,
right? And let's do that, and let's work together and present that at the budget hearing.
I think it's important data, because we all forget about it. We work year to year, and then we forget about what we did 3 years ago.
Okay. Any questions on revenues? I'm watching the clock here too. Any questions on revenues?
Not right now.
Okay, let's close revenues with the understanding that it will be updated and we will revisit. And there was an addition to tonight's agenda on 4140 Town Clerk. So I will turn it over to questions.
Yeah, so I had emailed it. I know Ms. Harrison had shared a communication, and then it was shared with the rest of the budget committee that just had to do with the part-time clerk positions. And so I think based on the information that we saw that was communicated to us via email, I wanted to bring it back as a conversation if it was something we needed to discuss. If it's not anything that we needed to discuss from a budgetary standpoint, but at least give us the opportunity. We've got that information. Is there a budget concern or implication from that information that was followed up and communicated with us from the town clerk after last meeting?
Well, I don't think that the 2 part-time positions are going to fly. The board is not in favor of it. I spoke to every member today. We're in favor of keeping everything the way it is. And if there is going to be a new position, even if it's part-time, it'll go to the voters.
My concern is it looks like we took a part-time and made it a full-time with benefits. We added a position, we turned a position that had no benefits into one with benefits without going before the voters.
We took an employee that had been here for 25 years who did not want to be the deputy clerk anymore and reduced the hours. And then we voted, because she had been here so long, that we were going to give her benefits.
I understand, but if I beat up the school, to be fair, I got to pivot back to you.
Well,
and
you
be
can
like,
beat me up for giving her benefits, but I won't.
it's nothing I understand. And taking the personality out of it, and the personal aspect is we go after the school every time they do something like this. And so I'm a little,
But it didn't create a new position.
but it added a cost that wasn't in there. We went from a position without benefits to a position with benefits, and those benefits are
That's
not
correct.
inexpensive. So when
That's
we're
correct.
talking $60,000 overage, how much of it is related to an added added benefits package?
The history of this department is that you had a full-time deputy, a full-time elected town clerk,
Mhm.
and we had a part-time clerk,
Mhm.
which was 32 hours a week.
Mhm.
That individual retired, and we, hired another part-time clerk. That person left. And at that point in time, that's when we had this transition from the person that was holding the deputy position going down to the clerk position. And there was some personnel matters that were that transpired with legal counsel, and I can't really get into those.
No, and I'm not asking for you to. It's just my concern.
I
went
understand,
from,
but
we added a position with the benefits.
we didn't. The part-time position that was there at 32 hours.
Yeah.
I want to go back and look and see what the benefits were, but
Okay.
that position had been there for years, and I want to go back and see what it had for benefits.
So
If we could see what the cost
Because
implication is.
I'm not confident with what the health insurance benefits were under the 32 hours a week.
my question was around, if I'm reading this correctly, and perhaps I'm not, that, and I think I heard Mr. O'Leary say this, less around the benefits, but more around there was a reduction in hours, but did the hourly rate, did the salary stay the same? If there was a reduction in hours, did the line item stay the same? If that position was less hours, was it still the same amount of money that was previously prior to that reduction? And that's the way I interpreted the information that was communicated to us.
As
But
well.
okay.
Yeah, the information, I will state that I'm absolutely shocked that information was shared with you. But I can tell you that we had non-public sessions. We've consulted with legal counsel to deal with this matter. And the end result is a personnel matter that was resolved, we believe, and both parties came to an agreement.
Okay.
I would still like to know the cost differential. I don't care about I get that it's a personnel matter.
Same.
It's whatever. But again, if I'm going to be harassing the school for expanding positions by adding a benefits package, potentially, we've expanded a position without voter approval. So I'd like to know what the cost implication of that decision was. That's all. Because if what's good for the goose is good for the gander. Sorry.
I just, again, it's late and I don't want to argue with you, Carrie, but I'm sitting here tonight and I'm not aware of a voter approval vote or mandate for town part-time positions.
We have pulled positions from budgets because we knew and expand positions we're getting.
No, I'm just saying maybe the budget committee didn't support funding something. I'm just not aware of a town meeting vote
So you're
that doesn't allow the selectmen to adjust a part-time position,
so the way we
just want to make sure I'm not missing
I think what
something
we're
here. Is
talking
there a
about is
vote?
back to
Is there a vote that says the
agreements.
town selectmen cannot do this?
No.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
I'm just saying it's traditionally been that when we make those changes, it does get brought and highlighted and put before the voters.
And
Whether or not it's officially
sometimes
mandated.
sometimes the board of selectmen has
Best
been
practice.
elected to deal with personnel matters that
Good
help
Lord.
prevent lawsuits and other issues.
I think we should leave it at that. I think the lesson here, for just as a reminder to the committee, is if you could please channel all communication to myself before reaching out to department heads. I know that's, as a committee, what we agreed upon, and I
Yep.
would like to stick to that, please. Okay.
Oh, absolutely.
But I will provide you with that information.
I'm just sticking to the
I will
costs.
do a comparison of what the 35-hour part-time clerk position benefits are and what the 32.5 or 32 clerk hours, what the benefits were.
Again, my position
I
is
will do that
consistent
exercise.
regardless of town or school, and that is why I'm asking.
And my question was simply looking at the number side of it from a budget standpoint, not anything personnel related.
Right, mine too. I wondered why that option was included in the budget if it wasn't anything that was approved by the Board of Selectmen.
Was kind of weird. It was kind of weird that it was just there for no
It was
reason.
just there for information, but we didn't
was-
discuss it.
Yeah,
And that was kind of what's going on?
it was there for because in the initial discussion with the Board of Selectmen. And then the board, we're going to address this matter Monday night, and then, but the link should have been removed.
Okay.
All right. I think that concludes the budget updates and town business this evening, unless there's any final questions for Town Administrator Brown. No? All right. Thank you again, Troy. Appreciate it. Moving in forward with tonight's agenda, I know we're getting to the point where we're going to conclude here, but member input, new business. Anything that the committee would like to share? No? Okay. We'll move into our second public input this evening.
Crashing down the doors.
Crashing, I can hear some. We will now close public input. There's nobody coming forth. And we'll move into adjournment.
Motion made.
We have a motion by Ms.
Second.
Douglas, a second by Mr. Barca. We'll do a roll call vote, please, and we'll start with Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Ms. Harrison.
Yes.
Mr. Leary.
Yes.
I am an aye. Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
Yes. Mr.
Yes.
Taylor. Mr. Barca.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
All right. We are adjourned 8:00. Our next meeting is next Thursday, October 14th at 7 p.m. In the same room. See everyone then. Thank you very much.
Thank you.